Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Tuesday morning, May the 31st. I'm glad to be here. This is one child abuse survivor to another, and we're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and a chat room is open there. I did pop the link in there. I did find the real website, Joy to You and Me, from Robert Burney. And he had some web pages. Probably most of his web pages were on healing.about.com, and so that's where I just wasn't sure where to locate his real website. So he does have a real website, and I did pop that link into the chat room. But I'll read it out for those who are listening to the archive and listening by other means, and that's http://www.joy2meu.com. So www.joy2meu.com/codependence.htm. And that's where we're going to pick up with what we were left off yesterday, talking about codependence defined. What is codependency? And according to Robert Burney, and Robert Burney is a codependence therapist. He's a spiritual teacher. He's an author. He's written a book called Codependence: The Dance of Wounded Souls, which I'd like to get a hold of that book someday. And yeah, he's got some pretty good stuff here. I like what he has to say, and some of it I relate to, some of it I don't, but I think it's good material and good to look at it. I learn something every time I read stuff like this because, it helps me in my journey. So hopefully that's what be helpful for other people too. And, that's why I'm doing these shows. I'm not a counselor or a therapist or anything like that. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own shows, and I just wanted to be one more voice speaking out against abuse, and Blog Talk Radio was a great medium for that. I just stumbled upon listening to a show it's called Voices of Hope, and that's a great show on here. There's a lot of good shows on here. Voices of Hope is Gail Crabtree, and she does Blog Talk Radio shows, and that's who I was listening to her show, and that's how I found Blog Talk Radio. I didn't even know about it. So a year and a half ago I started doing my shows, and I really had no idea how long I'd be doing them, but I just wanted to be one more voice out here speaking out against abuse, standing up for child rights, and also to be another voice for adult survivors out here, adult survivors of child abuse. And so this show really is my healing journey. It's just I just go through, and as what I'm dealing with at the time, and try to deal with this information in little half-hour pieces, and it makes it manageable for me, especially for my healing journey, since I'm doing a self-help, and I don't have a lot of time, so my time is pretty much I don't know, it's kind of non-existent right now, just to have spare time. So this is kind of my healing journey. It allows me to take a look at my past and take a look at my behaviors now and why I'm doing what I do. And it's really helped me out to do that, to sort of take a third-party look at it and see what some of my behaviors are and actually work on correcting some of them, because this is, my behaviors are really based on how I grew up, and a lot of them are really not healthy behaviors, and they're not what people, whether even physically healthy or emotionally healthy or psychologically healthy. So I've had a lot of work to do to try to redo and undo all this garbage and this damage that my parents did years and years ago, that most people would feel like, well, how could that affect a person? How could that really affect a person's life years and years later? Many people, if they haven't been abused, may not realize just how much it does affect a person later on in life. Child abuse is a serious, serious issue, and whether it kills a child physically, it definitely will do some damage. And I really believe and felt that I was murdered emotionally and psychologically, like my spirit was murdered, and as a child, so I felt dead. And so I've had to do a lot of work, to go back and try to undo that damage that was done. And I started my healing journey about 4 years ago, and so I'm quite well away, into it, and I'm okay to do this stuff, self-help. But a lot of people, may not be, and that's why I always say at the beginning of the show that you have to listen at your own discretion, because all of my shows I'm talking about abuse, and it's a sensitive subject. Most people find it very uncomfortable to talk about, and most people find it very uncomfortable to listen to, or to hear anything about it. It is so disturbing. Really, it really is. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It is disturbing, and that's the sad thing, is that children are going through this right now. And I know growing up in the home that I grew up in, having to see and deal with what I was having to deal with as a child, it is very disturbing. You know what I mean? And so I can see that it's an issue for society today to even pay attention to child abuse because it's so disturbing. But there are a lot of good people out here who are doing a lot of great work, regardless of how disturbing it is. That's exactly why we're doing what we're doing to stop child abuse. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and we're fighting to save children's lives, and that's what we're going to continue to do until we leave this planet. And so, there's a whole lot of other people out here too, other advocates and whatnot that are not with Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and we see them and we know who they are, and they are doing some awesome work. So regardless of who you're with and what organization you represent, or if you're just on your own doing this work to try to stop child abuse, we're standing side by side with everybody to try to make a difference in this world for children. Because we don't want to see any more children be abused. Like, no child should ever be abused. And I look back at my own story, and it's not a special story. There's nothing special about it. I wrote my book, A Life of Death, The Redemption. It was a blog called Not So Fond Memories, Growing Up in an Abusive Home, and I wrote that in October of 2009. And then last year, 2010, it got published into a book, thanks to Donna Shear and Sandra Potter from Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, because they saw my blog and they said that really needs to be a book, And so I was like, well, I didn't know if they were serious or not. I didn't know if I should, but I realized after a while that they are very, these women are not women to say, that they think something should happen and just be, blowing smoke. They're true, they're honest people, and they really believed it should be a book, and I took them serious, and we went ahead and published it. But all the proceeds are going to Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. That's what I wanted. I didn't want the money for that book. That's my story, and it was painful. It was painful to live it. It wasn't painful to write it. I paid for that story with my own flesh and blood and my tears and sorrow and grief, and I didn't want the money for that book, you know what I mean? Like, I wanted that money to go stop child abuse, so that's why I hope that people will pick up a copy of it. And, it wasn't difficult to write it, but it was difficult to live it those so many years ago. And, I know what these kids are going through out here, and that's why, we're working hard. We're trying to do whatever we can to stop child abuse. So thanks to everybody else who's doing the same thing, right? But that's why I do these shows, and I just kind of, I always tell people, listen at your own discretion. You have to know what's good for you to listen to. Ultimately, it's your choice. If you feel like the topics of abuse may bother you, domestic violence, sexual violence, abuse, you have to turn the show off. It is clearly your discretion to listen. And young people under the age of 18, I just ask that you have permission to listen to my shows from an adult. Like, I didn't have parents who cared about me, so I know it's a little bit hard sometimes to find a parent or a caregiver or even another adult who you trust who can help you make a decision whether or not you should be listening to this. But I would hope that you have somebody that you can count on in your life if you're a young person under the age of 18, to have them listen to one of my shows and see if it's okay for you to listen to, age appropriately and everything else, right? Because I just believe in protecting children at all times, right? So make sure you do that for me and for yourself. Keep yourself safe, right? So we're looking at codependence. This is it's called Codependence Defined by Robert Burney, B-U-R-N-E-Y, and he's got his web pages here, www.joytomeyou.com and /codependence.htm. And we were just talking about this yesterday. Actually, we've been looking at his website for about a month now. Really good stuff. And he says codependence and interdependence are two very different dynamics. Codependence is about giving away power over our self-esteem. Taking our self-definition and self-worth from outside or external sources is dysfunctional because it causes us to give power over how we feel about ourselves to people and forces which we cannot control. Anytime that we give power over our self-esteem to something outside of ourselves, we are making that person or thing our higher power. We are worshiping false gods. Well, this is just what he says here. He says, actually, the term codependence is an inaccurate and a somewhat misleading term for the phenomenon it has come to describe. A more accurate term would be something like outer dependence or external dependence. And he says codependence is a primary, progressive, chronic, fatal, and treatable disease which is caused by being raised in an emotionally dishonest, sexually hostile environment. And the primary environment is the family system, which is part of the larger emotional, dishonest, and dysfunctional society, which is part of a civilization that is based on false beliefs about the nature and purpose of being human. So this is Robert Burney. He's very much, into taking a look at the bigger picture. Codependence allows us to survive physically, but causes us to feel empty and dead inside, and that's his definition here. He just goes on to describe what he feels is codependence. Codependence is a defense system that causes us to wound ourselves. And traditionally in this society, women we're taught to be codependent on, that is to take their self-definition and self-worth from their relationships with men, while men have been taught to be codependent on their success, career, or work. So these are excerpts from Codependence, The Dance of Wounded Souls. And so they're all from Robert Burney. It's good stuff, like codependence defined, and this is where we sort of were talking about yesterday. He says, codependence is about having a dysfunctional relationship with self, with our own bodies, minds, emotions, and spirits, with our own gender and sexuality, with being human. Because we have dysfunctional relationships internally, we have dysfunctional relationships externally. And we do not have the power to change others. We do have the power to change our relationship with self by healing our codependent, wounded souls and tuning into higher self. And we can access the capacity to accept, embrace, forgive, have compassion for, set boundaries with all parts of self. And by learning to love ourselves, we will gain the capacity to truly love our neighbor. So I think it's quite interesting what he's written here. And, some of it I relate to, some of it I don't. But for the most part, I like what he's written here. It's a little bit different than John Bradshaw's stuff. I like John Bradshaw. John Bradshaw wrote a whole lot about codependency and healing the shame that binds you and whatnot, toxic shame, toxic rage, codependency and whatnot. And John Bradshaw, I'd like to get a hold of his book too. There's quite a few books I'd like to get when I get some extra money to get them, and they'd be really helpful, I think. He says, Robert Burney says, changing our relationship with life can transform life into an exciting adventure. Changing our relationship with self will change the world. Well, this is so true, because really, mainly, like what he's talking about here, like my wounded inner child is from so long ago. She's still there, but that doesn't, the whole idea that she lives within me, is kind of interesting, because I'm 45 years old and I'm able to hold jobs down. I'm perfectly capable of getting through this life, in that sense, like as an adult person on the planet, which is great, because I'm really quite high functioning. I don't have, these problems of even physically, with all the physical problems that I have, I still manage to keep going without too many problems. And with the emotional stuff, the psychological stuff that was done to me as a child, I'm still able to function, in society, which is great, because it's really been, I'd say, a bonus, to be able to not be, so disturbed about things that I couldn't work or couldn't hold down jobs. So what I have is quit jobs. I've done made a lot of bad decisions based on how I grew up, on my belief system and on the fact that I was abused as a child. I've made some really bad decisions in my lifetime, but I've always been pretty high functioning and be able to show up for work and do things and, keep jobs and whatnot when I want to. And, it's good in one sense, because I can keep going, you know what I mean? But in the other sense, there's still part of me from so long ago that I'm still working on, and that's my inner child. That's that healing journey from being abused so long ago, right? So by changing our relationship, with our life and with ourselves, we can change our own personal worlds. And that's so true, because 4 years ago I was sitting around in the same place that I had been for so long, which was misery, depression, not I wouldn't say manic depressive, but of course I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatric, psychologist or anything like that. I wouldn't be able to make my own, diagnosis. But the thing is, I had always been having suicidal, not tendencies, but suicidal plans, right? My family was a family full of suicidal thoughts and plans. My dad would threaten to kill the whole family while we were sleeping, and he would threaten to kill himself, and he actually did attempt to kill himself quite a few times when I was growing up, especially around the age of 8, 9, 10 years old. He would try to kill himself because he was, he was just really messed up at that time, and he would run down the freeway, and my brothers would have to go get him and lock him into his bedroom so he wouldn't get out and couldn't hurt himself, it was pretty sad. But then he would threaten to kill the whole family too. He'd be like, I'm going to kill the whole family while you're sleeping. I'll kill you all while you're sleeping. You're all from the devil and things like this, what I had to grow up listening to. And then my mom was suicidal. She was a suicidal thinker. She was always thinking about suicide. She was always threatening it, like, I'll just kill myself, or I should have killed myself years ago, she would say. This was like, at night after, we're all sitting around in the evening, and she usually be sitting at the kitchen table smoking her cigarettes and reading a book or something, crying the blues, and, I should have killed you, and I should have killed myself, and all this other stuff, And so my parents were always talking about suicide and always talking about killing themselves, killing the family, killing me. So I just grew up listening to this, and it just seemed like an option. My other siblings listened to this too. One of my sisters actually took a gun, and she had a gun, and when she disappeared for 3 days. We thought for sure she was going to kill herself, and so she was suicidal as well. My other two brothers killed themselves. One was suicide. He had attempted many times. So it happens in a suicidal family when there's no support from within. There's no family love. There's no family strength. It's everybody's on their own and they're all thinking about killing themselves. That's how I grew up, and pretty sad really. And one of my brothers was murdered, so he didn't have a chance to be suicidal. But my other sister didn't seem to talk about suicide, but she says that she drives around at night and cries in her car because she doesn't want anybody to know how she really feels about what's been done in her lifetime and how sad she really is. So she lives two lives, my sister, the one that's next to me in age. She's two different people. I believe she's dissociative, and I believe that she's got multiple personalities from the abuse that we suffered. You know what I mean? She was dressed as a boy when she was a child, and the two of us, we just hated our bodies. You know what I mean? Like I don't know if my sister was sexually abused, but I know I was. And so I don't know if she was, and so I can't say if she was or not, but she's never said anything. She never admitted to it or said anything. I actually told her last December, that actually a year ago December, so a year and a half ago, I told her about the fact that I have been sexually abused by our brother. I wanted to tell her so that it would open the door for her that if she was sexually abused by any of the brothers or by my dad or whatever, because my mother, I don't believe my mother was, my mother didn't sexually abuse me. She just beat the shit out of me and abused me in every other way. But I opened the door for my sister to actually say, whether or not she was abused, but she wouldn't say anything. And so if she was, she's not gonna admit it. She's not gonna say anything. She used to hate her breasts, and she used to actually wrap them up and tie them up really flat with, wrap, those bandages, right? And she used to bandage her chest, to make it really flat. She hated her breasts, and actually, I grew up hating my breasts as well. We hated our sexuality, and it's because our father was abusing our mother on a regular basis and raping her and calling her names and whore and slut. And my mother would turn around and call us whores and sluts, and that we were just, useless whores and all this stuff, really absolutely horrible stuff. And, this is why it just makes me angry that there's other people in my family that knew the abuse was going on. And even today, that's why I don't talk to my family. I'm just completely cut them all off, including my nephews, my niece, and everybody. Because anybody who can sit there and say that that's not wrong, there's something wrong with them. You know what I mean? That's incredibly wrong to do to a child. And, especially when they know they're hurting you, but they don't care. My mother was abused as well as a child, and she knew what she was doing because she knew how much it hurt her to be abused. But anyway, this is the whole thing. I wanted to open the door for my sister to be able to come clean if she had been abused sexually by anybody, and so we could talk about it. But she wouldn't say anything. As a matter of fact, she did not even acknowledge that I told her that my brother had sexually used me and sexually abused me, and that our brother, and she just sat there and she didn't say anything. And a friend of mine actually told a good close friend of mine that about this, and she said, well, she probably didn't know how to handle it, or she probably didn't know what to say, and I guess that's normal for most people. I don't know. For me, I would, if it was my sister who came to me, my younger sister, my little sister who came to me to tell me that they had been sexually used by my brother, I'd have been like, oh my God, and I'd have been like hugging that sister and kissing that sister and telling her, oh my God, I love you, and let's talk, and you certainly didn't deserve this. My sister just sat there cold. I'm talking cold like a brick, like a stone brick. That's what her heart is. My sister is so screwed up, more screwed up than I am. You know what I mean? Because she can't look at anything, she can't acknowledge anything, she can't see anything, and she's just not on her healing journey. And I really feel bad for her. She's 5 years older than me. She's 50 years old, and I mean, it's just sad to see, to see that. She knows I'm going through my healing journey. She knows I wrote books. She knows I'm doing these shows. And, I guess she's just not in a place, right, where she's comfortable to even look at it herself. Because we all have to, as survivors of abuse, we have to all face this stuff when it's time to face it. 4 years ago for me was the date that 4 years ago in April, so it's really, exactly 4 years ago, that I actually started to face, what had happened to me as a child. Because, I mean, I had talked about it to many people before, so it's not like I was in denial or anything like that. But I actually allowed myself to heal. I said, okay, I'm going to heal. I'm going to allow myself to heal, and I'm going to get help no matter what, whether it's counseling, whether it's going to find a therapist. I'm going to allow myself to have a healthy life. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to allow myself to be destroyed by this abuse that I suffered as a child. And so that's what separated me from my family, because as soon as I started doing that, they didn't appreciate it. They didn't like the fact that I even felt that I needed to heal from the abuse that I suffered. And it's not like they didn't know about it, because we all talk about what happened to us as children. And there's only two siblings left besides myself. So, but we've had conversations over the years, like that, about the past and about our parents, about what happened. And it's not like they're completely in denial either. They just think it was okay that my dad did what he did to my mother and to all of us, and that what my mom did to me and to all of us was okay. And it wasn't okay. There wasn't anything okay about it. You don't threaten to kill your children and beat your children and hurt your children and you just don't do that, right? But that's what people do. It's very, very sad. But you can't say that that's okay. But see, to them, if they say that it's not okay, then that means they have to do something with it. If they admit that, oh man, that was so wrong, it means that all of a sudden they have to feel a different way about it, and that means they have to almost like address it and face it. So they'd rather not. So they sit there and they just say, oh well, no big deal. No big deal that our brothers killed themselves, that my dad raped my mother in front of me, that my dad was raping my mother for years. Absolutely horrific, this hell of a lifestyle and a hell of a life that they really created for us as children. And for them to sit there and sit on the fence and say, oh, well, no big deal. For me, it's just like, oh, my God. No, it was so wrong. My mother had a right to her own body. She didn't deserve that. See, I'm just all about human rights. You know what I mean? So I think differently than them. You know what I mean? I think differently. My brother thinks that whatever you get in life is what you get. You get beaten on, you get sexually used, that's your own problem. And it's pretty sad, but that's the truth. And my sister just thinks, well, that's life. We just have to just roll with it, and we shouldn't be upset about it. We should just accept it, and it's okay what happened to us. And I mean, maybe that's just the way she looks at it. Maybe that's the only way she can look at it. That's fine. I had so much anger and so much rage about what happened to me as a child, being the youngest of 7. I thought that it would never affect me. As a matter of fact, my siblings and I used to sit around. This was back when most of us were still alive, and we would say, that I would be the one, me, the youngest of the 7 children, I would be the one that was less affected by it, because I grew up in this hell. So did they. But I, for some reason, felt that I was a lot stronger than them. I don't know why. As a child, that I felt that way. You know what I mean? Like I felt that I was going to be not affected by what my parents were doing to me, and by what because we had all, like, my siblings would tell me about the stuff that went on before I was even born, and they would tell me about the times with the social workers and stuff. And I was 2 years old. I actually still remember the social workers coming in and checking my diaper and checking for bruises and stuff, and giving me sucker, talking with their clipboards, talking to my mom and stuff. So I remember bits and pieces of that, and I was only 2-3 years old, and I remember stuff really quite cognitively from 4 years old. And but they would tell me lots of stuff that happened before and during that time when I was really young. And so we would sit around and talk about it, and we and of course they would agree and admit that this stuff had happened. You know what I mean? But I used to think, well, I'm going to be the one that actually makes it out of this alive. I'm going to be the one. It's probably some sort of inner drive to fight to live. Because I was born premature, and I was told that. I was told the story that I was born sick, really quite sick and premature, and I had my own doctor, my own nurse. My nurse named me, and my mother didn't name me. A nurse actually named me, and that my mother didn't even know she had me for about 2-3 weeks. She was in a coma after I was born, and then when I came home, I was just so small. I was so tiny. She didn't want to hold me because I was just so small. I was about 2.5, 3 pounds, and so she put me in a drawer because she was afraid I was going to get smushed by all the kids, because there was at the time five kids living in the home, and then 4. So there was 5 with me being 5. Right? 2 of my siblings moved out. One of my brothers moved out at the age of 16. The other, my sister, got married at 17 and took off just because of the abuse. I didn't come into a happy home. Let me tell you that. There weren't any cigars passed around, and nobody was happy that I was there. I was born out of rape. My mother hated me. She actually would tell me as a child that she hated me. Get away from me, you're just a rape child. and I hate you. Your father, you raped me, and that you're what came from that. She hated me, and she used to tell me that. So I mean, I knew that growing up, and so it wasn't a happy thing when I came home. And that's when the social workers were called in right around that time. I was about 2 years old, because my parents had to go to court, and they were brought up on abuse charges and charged with child abuse. They didn't do any time, but we were not removed from the home. But the only reason why we got to stay in the home was because my parents said they would get counseling. And so my siblings used to tell me about they went to a couple of counseling sessions and blah, 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 and all this. So they would fill me in on stuff that had happened. And I thought, I'll come out of this unscathed. I'm going to be the one to survive this. And that's what I thought, for so many years, that this would never affect me and that I would be fine. And I guess it was the only way I could survive really was to say that and to kind of ignore that little inner person within me who was screaming out. Because I had to go to school, I had to do things that normal people do, as a young kid starting school at the age of 4. I started early because of my birth date, and they wanted to get me out of the home. It was safer at school supposedly. I didn't like jumping right into school. I didn't even have I didn't have any kindergarten or preschool. I just went from this abusive home into this classroom with this old lady who was like, white-haired, and she reminded me of my mother, and she was always yelling at me, and so I thought, I just thought she was just going to hurt me too, like my mother, and so I would cry and cry, and she would call me a crybaby, and so I went from this abusive home into this abusive classroom. It was absolutely horrific, you know what I mean? And I thought, well, no, I'll be the one that makes it out of this. Always in the back of my mind, I was thinking, I'll be the one that's unscathed. And even, going through into prepubescent, teenage years, starting to do drugs and stuff, I would say, I'm going to make it. I'm going to be the one that makes it. I'm not going to let this affect me. And I think, it's kind of interesting to take a look at that because it really did affect me. And until 4 years ago, when I started my healing journey, really, I mean, I knew what it had done to me. You know what I mean? I knew the toll it had taken on my life and the toll that it had taken on my soul and my spirit, my heart. And I had so much anger and so much rage, and I was willing to take a look at it. And 4 years ago, that's what I started doing, whereas my sister and my brother haven't done that, or maybe in their own way they have, but they're just not willing to talk about it. You know what I mean? Who really knows? They don't talk to me. I don't talk to them either because I just sort of cut them off recently. But it's just, it's so sad to see what this stuff does to people. That's why I'm doing these shows, because I know what it's like to be on the other side of that. Two of my siblings killed themselves. My brother was 33 years old. He had tried to kill himself many times. Lots of people thought that it was just a one-time thing, but he had been trying to kill himself all the way through his 20s into his 30s. Finally made it at the age of 33. And my other brother died of a drug overdose, but he was always overdosing on drugs. He didn't care if those pills killed him. He used to take freezer bags full of pills, and almost died numerous times. But he finally died at the age of 37 in a homeless shelter up here in Calgary, all by himself. And a year after wanting to come home for that Christmas, my mother telling him, no, he can't come home. I don't want him around here. He's just going to cause problems. I told my bro, I said, sorry, we just don't have the money to, because my mom wouldn't talk to him. And here he is, 37 years old, in this homeless shelter, dying of a drug overdose all alone. His mother doesn't love him, and this is absolutely horrific. This is why I wrote my book, A Life, Death, Redemption, and I hope people will get it, because this book is about my siblings. Really, I want to be a voice for all abused people, children who have ever been abused, and even abused people in domestic violence situations and whatnot. I've been there. I've seen the whole thing. Absolutely horrific, the destruction and the damage it does to people. You know what I mean? And I know what this is all about. I know what this is like, and I hope that people will look for a better day. Stick around, get some help, allow yourself to heal. That's what I did 4 years ago. I said, that's it. I will not allow this to destroy me. I will not. I'm going to get help. I don't care whether it's a counselor, therapist, group support, online group support. I don't care, but I'm reaching out, and I refuse to end up allowing this abuse to destroy me, because, like I say on most of my shows, is I just didn't want to let my parents win this fight, because my brothers let my parents win. My parents won in their case because they destroyed themselves. They allowed this abuse to destroy themselves, and that's what my parents really wanted. They were trying to kill us, and they were trying to destroy us for many, many years. And so I thought, no way, I'm not letting my parents win this fight. No way, I'm going to win it. I'm going to have a great life, and I'm going to try to help as many people as I can, and try to stop child abuse, because I really care about these kids out here. And so this is the thing. Don't give up, not ever, 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 because through the bad days there are some good days. You know what I mean? Everybody has bad days. I mean, there's right now my sweetheart's terminally ill, and we just came through a month of some crazy stuff, and he nearly died about 2 weeks ago. So. but he's here today. He's awake. He's alive. Sun is shining. I'm telling you, stick around. You know, you make sure you get some help. If you can't cope, you phone a crisis line. I don't care. Those people are there for a reason, and you do whatever you have to do to stay here. Do not ever give up, because through those bad days, there's a good day somewhere, and then there'll be another good day, and another good day, and another good day, and a better day, right? But there won't be if you don't stick around. Make sure you do stick around. Take good care of yourself, right? So have a good day, everybody, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow, same time, same place. And take good care of yourselves. Bye-bye.